The energy landscape of North America is witnessing a seismic shift that few predicted. A decision that has sent ripples through diplomatic channels, corporate boardrooms, and energy markets worldwide. Canada has announced plans to purchase advanced nuclear reactor technology from China, and Washington's reaction reveals just how dramatically the continental balance of power is evolving. The political atmosphere across North America feels heavier than it has in years. Something unsettled is circulating through government halls, diplomatic circles, and public conversations. It is not dramatic on the surface. There are no fiery speeches or public standoffs that show the full scale of the shift. Yet, the tension underneath is impossible to ignore. Each policy decision, each trade agreement, each statement sent across a border is shaping a landscape that is growing sharper by the week. This is not a moment created by a single dispute. It is a build-up that has been forming quietly, gathering strength while leaders speak as if everything remains intact. What takes shape from this pressure will determine the direction of the entire region. The true question is how long the balance can hold. Now, there are turning points in a nation's life when an energy decision carries far more weight than technical specifications or cost projections. Moments like these reveal how a nation responds when traditional alliances no longer serve its interests, and when the future demands choices that previous generations would never have considered. Early December 2025 became one of those moments for Canada, triggered by a single announcement from Ottawa that felt more strategic than any policy shift in decades. It was a decision that exposed new priorities, tested old loyalties, and transformed an energy procurement into a question about who truly shapes the future of North American power infrastructure. Canada's message arrived with clarity and confidence. After years of evaluating options and facing delays from traditional Western suppliers, Ottawa revealed it would partner with China National Nuclear Corporation to deploy advanced reactor technology across multiple provinces. No apologies, no extensive justification, no deference to the concerns that would inevitably emerge from south of the border. The decision centered on CNNC's Hualong 1 reactor design, a third-generation pressurized water reactor that China has successfully deployed domestically and exported to Pakistan. The technology promises enhanced safety features, competitive pricing, and most critically, a construction timeline that Western alternatives cannot match. The context behind this decision reveals a nation fundamentally reassessing its place in the global order. For decades, Canada had waited for commitments from American and European nuclear suppliers. Westinghouse promised technology that faced endless delays. France's Areva offered designs at costs that provincial budgets could not sustain. Meanwhile, Canada's aging nuclear fleet approached the end of its operational life, and the transition to clean energy demanded immediate action. China presented an alternative that addressed every concern Canada had quietly harbored. The Hualong 1 reactors could be operational within 6 years, half the timeline of Western competitors. The cost per unit sat 30% below comparable American technology. Most importantly, CNNC offered technology transfer agreements that would allow Canadian engineers to develop expertise and eventually build domestic capacity. What amplified the impact was the geopolitical context. Canada had grown weary of conditional partnerships where energy security depended on the strategic priorities of larger allies. The decision to engage China represented more than procurement. It signaled Canada's intention to diversify its technological partnerships and reduce dependence on a single sphere of influence. Ottawa structured the deal with careful attention to national security concerns. Chinese firms would not control operational systems. Canadian regulators would maintain oversight of all safety protocols. The reactors would be built with significant Canadian content requirements, ensuring jobs and industrial capacity remained domestic. This was not a surrender of sovereignty. It was a calculated expansion of options. The response from the United States revealed how deeply this decision unsettled established assumptions. Initial statements from the State Department carried diplomatic language, but the underlying message was unmistakable. American officials expressed serious concerns about technology security, questioned the reliability of Chinese nuclear safety standards, and suggested the decision could complicate intelligence sharing arrangements. Behind closed doors, the reaction was far more intense. Energy Department officials warned about supply chain vulnerabilities. Defense analysts raised alarms about potential backdoors in reactor control systems. Congressional leaders began discussing legislative responses that could penalize Canadian energy imports or restrict cooperation on other projects. What Washington failed to grasp was that Canada had anticipated every objection. Ottawa's announcement included detailed security protocols, third-party verification systems, and transparency measures designed to address legitimate concerns while maintaining the partnership's viability. Canada was not asking for permission. It was informing a neighbor of a decision already made. The American response exposed a deeper anxiety. For generations, the United States had assumed it held veto power over Canada's major strategic decisions. That assumption dissolved the moment Ottawa moved forward without seeking approval. Boardrooms in American energy companies realized something fundamental had shifted. The predictable northern neighbor had become an independent actor willing to pursue its interests regardless of pressure from Washington. This decision did not emerge in isolation. Canada's nuclear deal with China represents one element of a comprehensive shift in how Ottawa approaches economic sovereignty and strategic autonomy. The same government that recently confronted General Motors over broken manufacturing commitments now demonstrated willingness to engage partners beyond the traditional Western alliance. Behind the scenes, a larger transformation had already begun within Canada's approach to energy policy. Many observers interpreted Ottawa's actions as reactive or driven by immediate needs. The truth revealed something more calculated. The current administration had spent years developing a more resilient energy infrastructure, strategic technology partnerships, procurement frameworks designed to prioritize domestic benefits, and contingency plans that reduced vulnerability to pressure from any single ally. For decades, larger powers believed they held leverage over Canada's strategic decisions. They could delay technology transfers, inflate costs, or attach conditions that served their interests over Canadian priorities. That dynamic shifted the moment the China nuclear deal was announced. Global technology suppliers in renewable energy, hydrogen systems, and advanced manufacturing began reassessing their strategies in Canada. They did not retreat. They became more responsive, which translated into a new form of respect. The pressure did not remain confined to the energy sector. The entire North American strategic landscape reacted to the shock wave. Countries that once assumed they could set terms for Canada without consequence found themselves re-evaluating plans. European nuclear firms suddenly discovered flexibility in their pricing models. American manufacturers began offering partnerships they had previously declined. Japanese technology companies reached out with proposals for collaboration. Behind the numbers in geopolitics were communities facing a future that traditional alliances had failed to secure. The nuclear deal promised thousands of construction jobs across provinces that had seen manufacturing decline for decades. Towns that once relied on automotive plants or resource extraction saw a pathway to economic renewal through advanced energy infrastructure. A single parent in New Brunswick with experience in electrical systems recognized an opportunity for retraining and stable employment. A worker in Ontario nearing retirement saw the possibility that the next generation might find meaningful careers without leaving the region. Young engineers graduating from Canadian universities understood they would not need to migrate south to find cutting-edge projects. The decision did not merely secure energy supply. It created an industrial ecosystem that could support families and shape communities for generations. Training programs were announced alongside the reactor contracts. Universities established partnerships with CNNC to develop Canadian expertise in advanced nuclear systems. Regional governments began planning infrastructure investments around the coming energy transformation. This carried financial consequences, but it also carried a moral weight that influenced Ottawa's calculations. The government did not act only to diversify energy sources. It acted to defend citizens who deserved opportunities that previous policy frameworks had failed to deliver. As the situation evolves, the story reaches a broader meaning that extends far beyond one energy deal. Canada stands at the threshold of a redefined national identity. The decision is linked to decades of questions about sovereignty, economic independence, and the ability to protect national interests against pressure from larger neighbors and established alliances. The lessons are no longer theoretical. They are displayed through policy decisions that create measurable outcomes. The nuclear partnership with China has become a symbol of a country drawing boundaries and maintaining them. Washington expressed concerns with confidence. Canada responded with actions that reshaped the dynamic entirely. Other nations are studying these events with intense interest. Middle powers across the globe recognize that Canada has demonstrated how strategic autonomy can be achieved without confrontation or isolation. Countries in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and even parts of Europe are watching to see if Canada's approach proves sustainable. Workers who felt their futures depended entirely on traditional partnerships now see a government prepared to explore every option. Allies that once assumed Canada would defer to pressure have learned they underestimated a nation that finally recognized its own leverage. American energy companies that delayed technology transfers suddenly face competition from suppliers they never expected Canada to engage seriously. Canada's power did not emerge through disruption or hostility. It appeared through careful planning, risk assessment, and a strategic framework built with long-term goals in mind. The central question no longer focuses on whether the nuclear deal will proceed. It centers on what type of country Canada will become if this approach continues. A nation that diversifies its technology partnerships, enforces its own priorities, and maintains its sovereignty begins to alter the balance of power in global energy markets. That balance determines which nations guide their energy future and which react to choices made elsewhere. The nuclear reactor deal with China marks the early stage of a new chapter. Canada enters negotiations with major powers from a position of confidence instead of hesitation. Decisions are made based on national interests rather than alliance obligations. And if the trajectory of this energy transformation reflects the future, the next developments in continental relations will carry even more significance than the events already witnessed. The reactor construction is scheduled to begin in spring 2026. By 2032, the first Hualong-1 unit should begin producing power for Canadian homes and industries. By that time, the geopolitical landscape of North America may look fundamentally different than anything the previous generation could have imagined. What do you think about Canada's decision to partner with China on nuclear energy? Should countries prioritize energy security over traditional alliances? Should Western suppliers have moved faster to maintain their position? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this video gave you insight into the shifting power dynamics in North America, consider subscribing, liking it, and turning on notifications. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.